Another episode of the Health Detective Podcast. My name is Evan Transu. I will be your host today. And I keep having to specify this, especially as we do these live ones, just in case someone is clicking in for the first time. I'm no one special in particular. I'm a podcaster with FDN. I do some other things here as well. But I do have my own health story. I had 7 different diagnosed conditions at the age of 18. And thankfully, the FDN system and the things that I learned there are the reasons that I don't have any of those conditions anymore. Do not meet the diagnostic criteria. I think that's amazing. And we interview people on this show who have been through similar things. Maybe they had to mix in some other modalities. That's totally fine. Some people are 80% better. Really doesn't matter to us. What we want are people who have done some very cool things health wise that many others think are impossible when they hear this half the time. And, they can use this information to get better. So, my guest today is Erica Duffy. I'm going to read her bio and we'll jump into it. She is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, certified health coach, wife, and mom with a deep passion for empowering individuals to take charge of their well being. Her own health struggles with breast implant illness, TMJ, and chronic hives, along with her husband's MS, multiple sclerosis diagnosis, have led her to where she is today as an FDN. Her mission revolves around helping people discover the path to optimal health and enabling them to embrace their true selves. Through her expertise with the use of functional labs and an extensive medical and lifestyle history, she guides individuals to understand their bodies, intensify underlying health issues, and make informed choices that lead to improved that lead to improved vitality and self-confidence. Her business is centered on the belief that everyone can achieve a state of vibrant health and comfort in their own skin, and she takes pride in helping individuals not only feel better, but also gain the knowledge and tools to maintain lifelong health and happiness. Well, Erica, that was not terrible considering I didn't edit it properly, and I told her off air this was in the first person, and I forgot to change it. So I think that was okay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to
Okay,
be
cool. So I'd love to dive into your story. That's always how we start this stuff off. And then that leads to the science and nerdy part of all this stuff. What did your first health symptoms look like and when did they start? I know we touched on them in a more broad perspective in the bio, but when did these things start and what was the first one?
So it all started in 2016, because prior to 2016, I didn't really have any health issues. Maybe got a common cold every year. Now I have 4 kids, so now they're teens and tweens, but at one point they're little, always catching something.
Mhm.
But in 2016, I decided to get breast implants, and it took me a year and a half to connect the dots and realize that the implants were causing the issues because then symptoms started coming. Like the next day, I went for my post-op and I had like a rash on my
Wow.
chest, and she said, "Oh, it's your body getting used to a foreign object. Put some lotion on." So I just said, okay, and just brushed it off. And then I started getting, a couple months later, I got some anxiety, and I've never experienced anxiety before. And it was, I went to immediate care. I thought something was seriously wrong. I didn't know what was going on. And they, they said, all your vitals are fine. You're fine. So I just thought I was fine and went home. And then I started getting heart palpitations in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and wouldn't know what's going on. My husband's like, "What's going on?" My heart be racing. So I went to my doctor for that. And she sent me to a cardiologist. And the cardiologist had an echo done. And the tech said, "I can see most of your heart, but your implant's covering part of it. And I don't want to press too hard because I don't want to rupture it." She said, "So I'm just going to leave that part be." And I thought, well, what if there's something behind that you're not seeing? But the cardiologist didn't see anything. She just said, "Okay, we'll leave that be." And they didn't find any answers. And I said, "Could this be my implants?" And she said, "No." So I said, okay, then I just kind of learned to live with it, right? You just kind of like don't find an answer. You just kind of, I would just wake up in the middle of the night. It still was happening, and I would just kind of calm down sooner and just go back to bed. And then that year I had like bronchitis, pneumonia, the flu, all back to back to back. And I've never had any of those. And it was within like, I just couldn't catch a break. So then, don't know if that was related to it, but it was just weird that that happened. Just all these little things were happening. And then with TMJ, with my jaw, all of a sudden, I I couldn't clench it anymore. It hurt so bad, and it was unaligned, and it was just so much inflammation. So I went to an oral surgeon. This is kind of where I started to dive into health and wellness a little bit, because he said, it's inflamed. You'll have to go on a liquid diet for 8 weeks. And that's all he told me. He said, so go on a liquid diet. I said, what does that mean? He said, well, just drink liquids. And I thought, this could be, it's a long time, liquid diet for 8 weeks, then another 4 weeks of soft chew. So I had to really look into my nutrients and make sure I was getting everything I needed. And I had lost weight. I don't recommend this to lose weight. It was medically necessary, but thankfully I think I was getting what I needed. Then that year I went to Las Vegas with my husband, and I was so cold. I could not regulate my body temperature. I just couldn't get warm. And we were outside, Vegas in the heat. We went back inside. I was under all the blankets. We turned on the heat in the hotel room. I could not get warm. And then I was just shivering and I was really tired. And that lasted probably only a few hours, but it was really strange. And then that happened a few more times after I got home. That's when I started looking up these symptoms, because I thought, this is really strange. I've never experienced even fatigue, even with 4 kids. I was always pretty, able to do what I had to do. I was never bedridden. And I wouldn't call it bedridden, but there were days where I couldn't do anything. So breast implant illness came up. And then immediately I knew. I was like, this is what's happening. Everything started since I got them put in. And I'd like to say, not everybody, I'm not telling people go get them taken out. Not everybody has issues with it. But if you're having issues and you're chasing symptoms, just look into that. That could be the reason why. So I made an appointment with my doctor, but then to have them removed. But in between the appointment and when I realized it in the appointment, my husband started getting really bad neck pain. And he's one who was just putting it off. He was studying for a big certification, and he wanted to take the test. So the day he took the test, his arm went numb, and then he passed the test somehow, and then he went to the ER, and they did an MRI, and he had a herniated disc, so that's why his arm went numb, because of the way it was pressing on his nerve. But they also said, well, we see some lesions on your spine, and then they said, we want to do a brain MRI too. So they did a brain MRI, and it lit up. There were lesions, and we weren't sure, what was going on. And then they came in the room talking to us as if we already knew. And they said, well, here's 3 pamphlets, for medication. I'm like, what's this for? And they said, oh, he has multiple sclerosis, which is really strange, because I heard it's really hard to get a diagnosis for multiple sclerosis. It was opposite for him. He didn't have any symptoms of it. And, but he had the lesions. So I went home that night, because he was admitted to manage his pain, because they couldn't do surgery for a month. And I had every intention on picking a medicine. I looked up the pamphlets, and I wanted to look up each medicine, and then all of a sudden side effects were coming up, and then lifestyle came up, and it said, it can be manageable with the lifestyle change. So I looked all into that, and I brought it to him the next day. I said, this is what I found out with the medicine, and I found out the lifestyle change. It's ultimately his decision. It's him who's going to be doing it. He said, I'll do whatever the lifestyle change. So I decided to go back to school to be a health coach. And I thought, maybe that will help. Then I'll learn how to help you with these changes, and we can make those changes at home. So I went to Dr. Sears first, Dr. Sears Wellness. And it was good. It was helpful, but it was more diet and shopping, and ingredient labels, and it was all about really diet. So then I decided to go back to school for my bachelor's degree in Health Sciences with a concentration in healthy lifestyle coaching. And I went to Arizona State University for that. And then I learned a lot more about lifestyle. And all this time, he's making the changes. He's doing great. Still no, symptoms. To this day, he's had some flare-ups. If stress,
Sure.
We've noticed stress, if he has a stressful, at work, could be stressful, or 4 kids, so he'll know the next day his legs might hurt. But all in all, he's doing pretty well. And during this, I had to go on the back burner to get my implants out, because he couldn't work he had the surgery. He couldn't work for 3 months. He couldn't lift anything. He couldn't drive. So I couldn't have a surgery too and go through that. So I kind of was just managing my symptoms, not really managing them, but just dealing with them. So then the time came And I decided to get them out, and I saw my doctor, and I was trying to get her to write a letter to cover it for insurance because it's expensive, to have them taken out. And I said, can you show that, like, I'm having these medical issues? I've never had it. And she said, well, let me test you for autoimmune. And I was like, I want to wait on that. I don't want that. I just didn't want the diagnosis. I thought, I'm going to take them out, and then I'm going to see how I feel. So I've always had eczema, like that I did have ever since I was little. But I can manage it, like on my hands when it gets cold, or if like I get stressed, I might get some eczema on hands, and I know what to do to get rid of it. And I had this patch that just wouldn't go away. The next day after I got them out, it was gone, just gone. So I told her everything stopped at that point. Everything, all those weird, I've never had heart palpitations again, or the chill, like the cold I was getting, or the fatigue. I didn't have any of that. So that was in 2019. And then my husband's still doing well. And then I graduated, and I didn't know what to do with my certificate. Like there was no business background in it. I just didn't know what to do. I was a photographer for 10 years before that, self-employed, and I kind of retired. I got burnt out from that. And so it's just kind of in limbo, not really doing anything, just focusing on the kids and family. And then last year, I started to get like a rash, like little hives. Like it was just, and I've never gotten that before. Mm-hmm. So then we were out of town in Las Vegas again, and I started, and then I would take like a Benadryl, which Benadryl makes me really tired. I hate taking it, but it would go away for a couple of days, and it would come back, and it was only like like a little bit. Then all of a sudden, they just erupted everywhere. It was head to toe hives that all day, 24/7, an antihistamine wouldn't even touch it, nothing. And I was like, it was all over. And I went to many doctors, and none of them, one said it's diagnosed chronic urticaria. He said, there's, up your antihistamine, start taking Pepcid, so I was trying everything. Then one day I did go to the ER because my lips were swelled up, and I was afraid my throat was going to close. Yeah. So, and I had COVID at that time too. And I think it might have made them worse, but I already had the hives. But then I got COVID, and then my lips swelled up. And he didn't really, I get it, in the ER, they don't really want you there with COVID. So he kind of just checked my throat and said, you're not in any danger, and sent me home. He said, take the Pepcid too. I didn't notice any difference. I was still taking it. I saw my general practitioner. He said it's environmental. Figure out something at home. And I was like, I've been trying to figure this out. I'm not coming up with anything. And he said, well, you just kind of. Then another doctor said, these things happen. You just have to wait it out. Like it's a flare up, and it'll go away. But I thought, well, why is it happening though? Yeah. Like there's something. My body's trying to tell me something, and. Finally, I did a visit with a doctor, and he said, your immune system is, out of whack for some reason. We need to calm it down. So he gave me steroids. So at first they didn't work. And they made because the lady told me, didn't specify how to take it. I took it wrong. So they started burning. Like the hives never burned, and it was just my whole body was burning. And then they said, no, take it this way. So I changed it, and then they went away. Like I felt like me again, because I've been like kind of hiding out, I couldn't wear any makeup. It would make it worse. I couldn't wear certain clothes, like too tight or too long. It would just feel funny. So then I was able to go out. I was able to leave my house. And then towards the end of the dosage, like the pack, it was day 11. It was 12 days. I was supposed to take it. Day 11, I started feeling really weird. Mm-hmm. Like I thought my blood sugar was dropping. I felt like really short tempered. I just felt like irritable. And I thought, so I went to the immediate care, and they said it's a side effect of the steroid. And I said, of course it is. So I thought, okay, it worked. I finished it out the 12 days, and then they came right back worse. The hives were right back. I didn't even think they could get worse, and they were worse.
Yep.
So that Mother's Day, I spent it in my bed. Like that's a lot of days. I was just in my bed. I didn't want to leave my house. I had this big patch on I had hives all over, but there was a really big one, like kind of on my neck right here. And I just was getting anxiety that my throat was going to close up, because it happens. So I tried getting an EpiPen just to feel better. They wouldn't give me one. So then I They said, no, you don't need one. That won't happen. Like it can't cause it.
Mhm.
So then I still was stuck and I thought, I can't deal with this anymore, and I feel for people who have chronic issues I mean, I was only a couple months in before I started really getting into, trying to figure out what was wrong. So I've connected with someone, she's had it for 15 years. Thought, how did you do this for 15 years? I couldn't even, you know, I it was just a couple months and I joined a Facebook page and all of a sudden I saw about functional medicine. And I thought, what? So I tried to, do some stuff on my own, change some supplements. Nothing was working, as you know, like tests don't
Yep.
guess. So um, I I found a functional medicine doctor, and then the first thing he did was a food sensitivities test. And then they said, I was already, so I've been a vegetarian since I was 11. And then
Okay.
when my husband had the MS, we were looking after the Dr. McDougall protocol, which was mainly plant-based. So he went vegan. And now I know, now I'm jumping ahead, but with FDN, protein and um, I realized it might have been gluten and the dairy might have been the issue for him. So he's since added meat back in. And I lost my track with this.
Well, you were going on about how you had went to the doctor. You've been a vegetarian
Oh,
since you were 11. There you
so
go.
he was afraid of being too restrictive.
Mhm.
He thought he didn't want to restrict too many foods. So then he took the test and it took 3 weeks till my next appointment. Well, I didn't want to sit and waste 3 weeks. So I did the restrictive diet on my own.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I'm doing this. It's high histamine. I know. I just kind of left out high histamine foods. I was starting to get a little bit better. And then I noticed my food sensitivities test wasn't terrible. It was what I eat was spinach, tomatoes, avocado. I had to, which is all high histamine anyways. So I was leaving it out. And that's the only test he did. He did a lot of blood work and he came up with, he said I had Hashimoto's, which I never, well, of course, now my doctor, conventional labs they showed in the normal range,
Right.
my thyroid. But I was surprised with that, but it was the antibodies were very low. So they said, we're going to leave out gluten. That's when I went gluten free. She said, leave out gluten and we'll see how it does with your antibodies. She said, if it doesn't get better, we'll add gluten back in. But
Mhm.
I felt so much better without it. I just still haven't I added it back in. Then I was starting to heal. But I was still having, I was getting a lot better. I would not have as many, but I was still having them. So then I came across a Facebook page with a lady who is a functional medicine practitioner, and I thought, you can do this. Like that's something I can do. So I was like, you mean to tell me I can run labs and help people? So I found FDN.
Nice.
That's when I just thought, I wanna I want to try to finish healing myself, see what I can find more about myself, and then I thought this is what I want to be when I grow up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Awesome.
just, yeah, I realized after, because I was sitting on that health coach and I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. So it kind of sparked, an interest. And I still saw my functional medicine doctor. He was still helping me. He had me on different supplements, but then with FDN, I did my labs last October. I was still having my hives, but my metabolic, my CAS score was 29 at the time. So it still wasn't, so my only complaint really was the hives, and I've had some acne, and I still have some hormonal acne that I'm trying to work on, but
Mhm.
I I don't know. I haven't retested. So I
Okay.
haven't, she by the time I did my test in October, and by the time that I did my R&R, because it took me some time to get through with the holidays and get through the program, the hives were gone.
Nice.
So she was kind of like, she goes, well, this showed that, you had high histamine. So at the time, it was just really strange how it just kind of all worked out. And I don't know. I just was following, as I was doing FDN, I was following the drug, like I was just making sure my diet, my rot, stuff I'd always worked on since, I mean, even growing up, I grew up in a household where, um, not holistic, but my dad was very into diet. Just, I always had vegetables and fruit and I had a bedtime and then he didn't let me sleep in. Like it was just, and then I just kind of followed through growing up. And so that's why I think I've always been pretty healthy. So when I wasn't, it was hard. It wasn't
Okay.
something I was, accustomed to. Because I've noticed working with a couple clients, they say 5 years is bothering them, or one was 10 years. And I just keep thinking, how do how do you, they just think it's normal. They thought it was normal. So,
I think too, I mean, as someone I talk obviously to a ton of people, not only client wise, but here on this podcast. And I would actually say you're right. It's more the norm, if anything, that most of
yeah.
the people, at least on this podcast, which you could say is maybe a biased group because people are actually super passionate doing this as a career. I don't know. But generally speaking, that is the norm where it's 10 years, 15 years of stuff going on before you really get an aha moment and figure these things out. And I especially think the younger that things start, the more we kind of rationalize and normalize these things in our head. I'm always so thankful that I had these kind of moments at 18, 19, where I finally, for whatever reason, just said, this doesn't make sense. It was the first time after all those years that I'm like, something doesn't add up here. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about this right now, but I just don't buy that I'm supposed to feel this way or have all these random things going on. So that's what I was going to ask you. 2016, this all started happening. But before that, it's not like you were living maybe, an FDN perfect lifestyle, but you would consider yourself someone because of your upbringing, maybe more aware of, some basic health stuff than the average American running around. Not that that's saying much, unfortunately, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I've always been one to for my sleep. I'm like, I need my 7, 8 hours of sleep at night because I know how I feel if I don't get it. So I've always been like that. And then when my kids were younger, I was on the go a lot with them. And then at some point, maybe it was 2020 or 20, because of 2020, you had to slow down. I just kind of realized it's not good for them either to be like, to teach them. Then they're thinking you always have to be on the go, 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 or eat in the car or eat. So we kind of scaled back and instead of them doing all these activities, they're each doing maybe one or two. So, and growing up, that's kind of how I was too. I always did activities, but I never felt on the go. So
Good.
it was just so I don't know. I think that's why once I started having the issues, I was like, no, this isn't right. But it took me a lot of doctors to figure out. I think it was the implants. Like there's no diagnosis. It's not a for sure thing, but it's just weird how it started after I got them, like the weird things that were happening. And then those stopped except for the hives. I don't know. I still don't know what caught. And that's what all the doctors told me. If you find out, I saw an allergist too, and he said he did an allergy test, and he said you might get rid of them because at that point I was starting to feel better. He said, I hope I never see you again, but you probably will. And he said, and then you should take Xolair for every 2 weeks, just a shot. He goes, that you could take that and it'll help you. And I thought, no, that's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's something that I wasn't interested in. I said, I hope I never see you again either.
And I
So
mean,
nicely, he meant it nice. He's like, I hope you continue to do well. But
great. And I mean,
he
as
said,
always, not medical advice by any means, but like my gosh, like when I hear these stories, especially with the allergic, sensitive type, excuse me, reactions, the drugs, I don't think people understand. Like these drugs are not particularly side effect free, and they're not
right.
free of long term issues either. If you take antihistamines constantly, there's consequences to that. If you're taking steroids, holy cow! I mean,
And
there's severe consequences for a lot of people that take those things.
yeah, and then the Pepsid, I realized too. I thought, is just that too. There's consequences. I took that for 3 months straight. And then the antihistamines, even though it wasn't helping, I was taking it because I was having like this anxiety thinking, what if I don't take it? It could be worse. What if I don't take it and my throat closes up?
Yep.
So I hated that feeling. I hated that. So I was still taking them. And then they said you could take up to 4 times the dosage on the pack, which I never did. Anything more than two actually made it worse, which was,
Hmm.
it was just strange how it was all working. And the allergist told me there's no, it's just some, it's just a chronic. He said urticaria is you don't know what's causing it. And he said there's no food that could make it worse or better or lifestyle. So,
What is
but
I had to ask this, forgive my ignorance, but what did the Pepsid have to do with a histamine thing? Maybe I don't fully understand the drug
I
use of
don't
that.
either. It's weird because the emergency room doctor told me, he said it's a cocktail that usually helps. And I honestly didn't look into it. I didn't. I just was desperate and I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And then the allergist said, yeah, keep taking that. That actually could help. But I have no idea.
Yeah, and you're saying Pepsid, right? Like the stuff that's normally used
Yeah.
for acid reflux.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Wow. I'll look that up myself. And that's okay.
Yeah.
At least
Look it
I'm
up.
not totally far out them as I'm feeling ignorant. I'm like, what the heck? Like, why does that do
Yeah.
something? So I'm glad I asked because that'll be interesting to see at least what their thought process or theory is behind that. The only reason I even knew what that is because I would go into the hospital maybe once or twice a year for severe stomach pains. Never ended up like no appendix removal or anything, but they would give me that stuff. And I went from, 8, 9 out of 10 pain. We're going to the hospital 3 in the morning to 30 minutes later it's gone. So I know that it can be used for those types of things, and that's really interesting that they used it for you as well. So you're still, in a sense, on this journey, and this is kind of my favorite type of interview because I love people that you're definitely over a lot of the main humps. I love that your husband's doing so well because it's a serious diagnosis, obviously, but you guys are pushing right along, learning all these things and then sharing it with us along the way. I didn't say this when I first started talking again. I really have a huge respect because you're not the first person to do it. There's been like 3 or 4 total in the 270 something episodes. I really have a huge respect for the women that are coming on here talking about the breast implants and explants, right? Getting them removed. I can't relate to this, right? I'm a man, but I would have to imagine that is not the most comfortable topic or like first thing you want to share. But this is so important because by people not sharing it, there's probably millions of women out there right now, or even tens of thousands would still be a lot, that are dealing with symptoms and have no idea that this is even a possibility. They've never even connected those dots. And I guess in a certain sense, I mean, I'm not thankful that you dealt with the symptoms, but I'm thankful that you were able to so easily connect it beforehand that when this happened, I started feeling this way. And this is what really being a health detective means in a sense. It's not being smarter than a doctor or pretending that you have a degree. It's nothing like that. It's using some common sense because as of right now, Western medicine, you're right, would not give you any diagnosis for what you experienced. But there are tons of anecdotes with this. Yes, that's not peer reviewed science. I get it. But a lot of the best science comes from people first having anecdotal experiences. And then someone that's a researcher wonders, I wonder if we can study this, right? Like it always starts with the anecdotes or a completely random hypothesis, but most of the time it's the anecdotes that lead to these studies being done. So this is not the first time I've heard this. It's very crazy to me that it can even trigger this. And I guess there is an interesting part because that surgeon, they did acknowledge that by putting something foreign in, they expect a reaction, but what was it? They just expected something short term, right? Not over
Yeah.
many years. Okay. Okay. So that's the difference. We're halfway there with Western medicine. They just don't go all the way with it, I guess.
Right. There's some like, so I saw my original surgeon because I was comfortable with him. So I wanted him to remove them, but he didn't believe that it was the issue, which was fine. I just wanted him out, but he wasn't going to remove the capsule. So a capsule forms around the implant. It's your body just trying to protect the foreign object, and the capsule still holds toxins. So it was very important to get the capsule out too. I thought because there's many ladies who get them out and not the capsule, and they still have their issues. So it's not saying that maybe the implants weren't the issue, but then they would get the capsule out and then they would be able to heal.
Right.
So I went to a surgeon who believed in breast implant illness and was removing them. So
Okay.
that was what he was doing.
Well, good. So there's some people out here on the front line understanding that this actually does something to
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah. There are, and I understand. Again, like I said, I know people who have them and they thankfully don't have issues. But then I didn't really jump into the genes much. I want to. There's one called MTHFR.
Mhm.
It's you can't properly like detox, like, so that's why some people who have them maybe are detoxing the toxins okay, or your toxic bucket Like, so I learned a lot about the toxic bucket with the hives. Like, there's just things, there's certain toxins you're throwing in your bucket. And then for me, it just eventually tipped over. And all this time I thought, I'd be buying like all like free and clear products or things that said they were clean, but I learned when I had the hives that certain things weren't, because I would just get worse. So like I know Pine Sol is not clean, but I love the smell of Pine Sol, and I mopped my floors one day, and then all of a sudden hives all over. So I knew I can't use Pine Sol anymore. Or I used to drink, or I still drink sometimes, Dunkin' decaf coffee, and it must be the mold or something in it. It just would I would get these
Yeah.
hives on my hands. So then I learned, like, so I'm kind of grateful it got me, like, going through it got me to where I am today. It taught me, environmentally what I had to change in my house, because, or even lipstick. I barely wore makeup because it made it worse, but I went to my friend's birthday and I put lipstick on and my lips just blew up like I had fillers within. And then I talked to the functional medicine doctor and she referred me to EWG.org, to look into the toxins in my lipstick. Sure enough, it was like a 7. I think it was at a toxic level of a 7. And I had no idea. I didn't know like makeup could do that much, or like shampoo. And so I just did a complete overhaul of everything. And in my house now too, like I use the laundry sheets now, or instead of, um, so that was interesting. I learned a lot from that too. So while you're in it, while you're dealing with your health issues, you might not see, because I always try to see the positive in a situation. I always try to feel like, but it's hard to sometimes when you're in it, see it right then and there.
Of course.
So it was like, it took a few months. I'm like, okay, this is why I have to experience this, and then I can help other people.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I'm more of a spiritual person now, but there was a time during this health journey, even on the positive end of the health journey, that I wasn't. And so there's a personal preference, but my point in mentioning that detail is, obviously many people who are spiritual, religious, whatever you want to call it, totally believe everything happens for a reason. And then you have
mhm,
many secular atheist people who might not believe in that. But the philosophy that was someone proposed this to me is they said, well, it doesn't matter if you don't believe in something else. What if would happen if you acted like everything happened for a reason? And wouldn't that change your thought process? I'm like, oh, that's brilliant, right? Because just pretending actually still leads to a positive outcome without getting too woo woo. Like if I look at the negative things that happen in my life and said, okay, if hypothetically, just hypothetically, this was to happen for a reason, what would someone who experienced this for a particular reason go out and do? And it switches your mindset very positively into, okay, well, look at the other things that maybe I'm preventing long term now that I'm more aware of my health. Look at the fact that you're probably able to help your husband way more because you're into this stuff than you
yeah.
otherwise would have been. And not to mention the countless clients and sharing stories like this. So whether you're spiritual or totally secular, it actually really doesn't matter. Just acting like these things happen for a purpose makes total sense. And what you mentioned about the chemicals on a side note, I think is super important. This is a theory, obviously, but I genuinely believe that the issues with the chemicals are one of the bigger reasons that women deal with like 7 times the rate of autoimmunity. So
Yeah.
we already know that compared to other countries that are less modernized, they use less chemical cleaners and they actually have lesser incidence of autoimmune diseases. But when we come to the United States of America, it's literally like 7 times more women deal with autoimmune diseases than men. And you could say misdiagnoses because men are stupid and don't go in as much. But we also know that women don't get represented as much. When they go to the doctor and talk about something, this is true, they're more likely to be told that it's in their head than a guy is. But I think a lot of these societal standards that we've created, and I'm not this isn't like a political thing, right? I'm not someone that complains about the societal standards imposed on men and women, but I think it's very practical to say there's an expectation for women to use way more products, like you said, the makeups, the lipsticks and stuff, than men. And worse yet, if we go back even farther, there's a total stereotype that is being deleted right now because of the requirement for most people to have 2 income households. But historically speaking, women, for better or for worse, right, would have been more of the people taking care of the house while the man might have been working. Obviously, that's like a thing of the past now.
Mhm.
Many women are still working and doing all that stuff, right? So they're
Yeah.
doing like 3x what they normally would have done. But my point is, I think they're more active with those chemicals. If I look at my dad, landscaping Greg, he's out touching dirt and doing all this kind of stuff. And his apple at lunch would fall. I remember this when I was a kid. I was working with him the one day. His apple would fall on the ground. I thought it was the dirtiest thing in the world, knowing what I know now. It's like so smart to do this. And he'll pick it right up and eat it, right? Versus my mom, when she's working at the restaurant or working at home, pine salt, just like you said, loves that. Lysol, she's using Clorox, all these different things.
Yeah.
I've had to eliminate a lot of that stuff in my life. When we use the watt, and people hate this, but I swear no one's ever told me that I smell yet. So either they're very polite or it's working. Like when I use my washer and dryer, most of the times, unless we like really tainted the clothes by going hiking or something, I just use the heavy duty setting with water and the clothes come out and they smell fine. Dishwasher, same thing. I just put it on heavy duty and we just use water a lot of the times.
Oh.
There's 5-10% of the time it doesn't work as well as you wanted to, but like 90%, I'm like, the whole point of the dishwasher is to wash the dishes. I don't think it like requires a certain thing for it to automatically work. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how well these things do work if you just eliminate them. So I don't want
Yeah.
people to go too neurotic with this, but I think you pose a really interesting point where we're kind of in this chemical storm and it's pretty damn hard to avoid. And it can be anything that triggers these things. Sometimes something very benign and sometimes something more, you know, daily. Like you would, the benign, I guess, would be the lipstick, right? You'd think that shouldn't do anything. And then you have
Yeah.
something harsher like a pine sol. Well, that's, we kind of know it's bad, but we keep doing it. So what
Yeah.
are the practical solutions for people? You mentioned that you use certain brands, or are there recommendations for things that you like more than not?
So I like, oh gosh, I wonder if I can find, oh man, on the spot. I don't know if I can remember. Hold on one second. Um, Clean People. Clean People is a good, I'm going into this, and then makeup wise, I've changed to Honest Beauty. And, but then after being in like, this was before FDN, and then, well, while I was in it, and now I want to try like, Beauty Counter. There's different ones I want to try. I'm just very basic though. And that's how I grew up too. So I think that's maybe I didn't use a lot of chemicals growing up. I just always had shampoo, conditioner, and a body wash, and I barely wore makeup growing up. And my mom was very basic. I didn't really use perfume. So with my daughters, I'm trying. It's hard with the social media and with, they're just influenced. They want
Yeah.
this and they want that. And they're starting younger. My 11-year-old is my youngest, but she sees like my 17-year-old using things. And I'm just trying to educate them and I'm trying to change it over and say, well, if I'm going to buy it for you, it's going to be something, and the problem is when they have birthdays or something and friends buy them things, and then they use them, but it's just, I'm really trying to educate them on it. And because I know these, like, they're endocrine disruptors. And that's one thing too, that just any little, like I mentioned with the toxic bucket. So like for me, I get my nails done. That's one thing I do. I do go for the non-toxic, but being in there, there's something they might use that's not completely non-toxic. Because I'm not saying like wipe out everything, because that's hard, right? There's just certain things, changes you can make, or just pick and choose what you want to. Some people get their hair dyed. I haven't got my hair dyed maybe in like 7 years. That's just something I kind of stopped a while ago.
Mhm.
And who knows, maybe one day I'll start dyeing my hair and add that in. But so, like you said, you can't like completely, it's not everything. It's just now I know I could probably use Pine Sol again. I know I can drink Dunkin' coffee again. Because now so I think I pretty much had leaky gut
Mhm.
and I've healed it. So I don't have, my body can handle it again, but I just choose not to because I don't know if, how I'm filling my bucket. I'm choosing how I'm filling it and what I'm filling it with. So,
I love the bucket analogy. It's not how I word it, but it's kind of the same thing where we got to pick our stressors, because what happens in this space, I'm fully a victim of this myself. So I'm preaching to the choir. It's it's a thing where when you're really sick and you start making all these changes at once because you're dedicated to feeling better, you'll do whatever it takes. It can create, I used this word already, a kind of neuroticism around, all right, I got to keep everything clean 100% of the time and be safe and never see an EMF again or be around one. It's like, okay, whoa, 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 holy cow. Humans would not have gotten as far as we did if we weren't resilient. And resiliency implies that we can handle some level of stress. I thought it was fascinating. Recently, my fiance and I left the country for the first time. At least I did, and we went to Italy. And Italy has the third longest life expectancy in the world right now, and 25% of the population smokes. Now,
Yeah.
no one would advocate that, and correlation is not causation, right? But one has to wonder, okay, what's going on there? It's not that smoking's good. That's not what I'm suggesting whatsoever. It's
Mhm.
that you find, oh, look at how tan these people are. They kind of all live outside. The
Mhm.
hills and the walking nature of their country and culture is crazy. So it's almost as if you can kind of balance the stressors a little bit. And you have to figure out what the major ones are for you. For me, the gluten thing, I'm never touching it, not consciously or purposely at least. I will avoid that as much as I can for the rest of my life. I have never purposely eaten it since I found out that I was sensitive. It hits me too hard. It feels too bad. But then there's other foods and other things that I'm like, does this mean I can never stay up late for one night again? Does this mean I can never have dairy again? Those are my things that I can play around with a little bit. We're going to a wedding this weekend for two best friends. Honestly, Erica, like literally 3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't have even stayed up past 10. I would have been like, hey guys, I'm leaving. Sorry. I'm going to enjoy my time this weekend and stay up with my friends because it's once a freaking year. Who cares? So we learned to kind of balance these things a little better. You have a bunch of comments here, which was great. So I'll fly through some of these really quick. Someone said, yeah, gluten can be a really big problem for many. Very true. I'll ask you this one question in a moment, but Shelby said, Erica, my husband has MS as well, and this is one reason I have joined FDN. Awesome, Shelby. We hope you, one, would love to have you on the podcast eventually, but definitely hope that this all works out well. Does your husband follow the same protocols? Like he reintroduced meat, sure, but is he doing kind of the FDN lifestyle?
We're trying. We're working on it. He is diet wise because he eats. I mainly do the cooking, so he's diet wise. We're trying with rest. I haven't done the protocols on him yet, and I told him I was like, I have a feeling. I just again test, don't guess. So I'm not going to do any protocols, but I feel like he might have parasites or mold, and so I told him I need to do these, and he's just hasn't yet, but he's doing. We're trying. He sleeps we try to sleep like 10 to 6:30 usually. Sometimes 10:30 to 6. Now I just, like you said, you go out. I do socialize. I went out for my friend's birthday a few weeks ago. I was probably out till midnight, which is late for me, but I had a fun time. It's good to have that connection too. So, um, he'll stay up late sometimes if we go out. For the most part, he's sleeping. He doesn't have a lot of time to do. I make sure he gets walks in every day with me, but he's working a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to help him manage his stress and tell him you have to. But
Yeah.
anyways, we're working
Well,
on
and I
it.
think it's more experience with this. I mean, like work, I'm gotta be in. I know this sounds funny, but I really do mean this. Work for me is that stressor that I kind of just love because I'm
Yeah.
doing stuff like this all the time. It's fun, but
Yeah.
I realized if I keep the other stuff really in check, that can afford me working kind of most of the day. What some people would consider work. I don't really look at it the same way, but I do know it takes a toll, right? It's not something
Mhm.
that you can just do forever and stay up all night. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
So I think it's even something that can be balanced for many people too. But yeah, we got to be it's all a trade-off. Find out what you love, what's worth it. For the Italians, 25% of them, it's smoking, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to give that up if they're walking all day, getting in the sun. So that's great. When
Yeah.
did you graduate FDN? Because you mentioned that you've taken some clients already. So how's that going?
April. I
Nice.
graduated in April. And then I did business school after.
Oh,
So
sweet.
then and then the kids were off by the time I finished business school, they were off for the summer. So I didn't really, I got a couple clients in June, and then I didn't really start until August. August, I started really trying. So,
Excellent. With those clients that you started with in June, I mean, I know it's been a few months depending on where the person's coming at in their
yeah.
journey or coming to you at in their journey. I mean, they could be profound. It can be, hey, we're making progress. But I'm just curious. I like to ask for some types of testimonials if they're relevant. So, have you had any things with these clients yet that like, hey, it's going really well. We're moving the needle. What's been going on there?
Actually, yes, I got her follow-up form yesterday. I have her fill in I'm meeting with her next week, but she filled out the form already, and her sleep is from 0 to 10, it's at a 10. Her energy's at a 10. She just feels great. She's out and about. She's doing really well. So
Nice.
she still has some things we're working on, but overall, she has her energy and she feels and sleeping really good. And
It's
those
kind
were
of an
probably
essential
at
part.
0 and 2 in the
Yeah.
beginning.
It's really hard to do the rest of this stuff without the energy, so those initial phases like, that's not a small detail, right? Like, when you
Right.
have the energy, you can do almost anything. What
Yeah.
always happens for a lot of us in the beginning of these journeys is your energy's so damn low.
Mhm.
You're so foggy all the time. It's kind of hard
Mhm.
to keep things moving. So that's
Right.
amazing. I'm excited to see what happens and how this all progresses. It'd be cool to have you, I'm getting a little ahead, but whether it's 6 months or 1 year down the road, I'd love to hear, about the business, how it's going with the clients. I definitely would love to hear about the stuff with your husband as well.
Uh,
I guess I'm thankful in a sense that it, it sounds like he's obviously willing to make changes, but not like we're not going to do the full thing yet. But part of that's because maybe his symptoms aren't warranting him saying I need to do the full thing. So I guess that's a blessing in one sense, right? Because MS can get pretty serious. So the fact that it's managed right now and it's
mhm.
really only those high stress days that lead to some symptoms, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Shelby's still with us and said yes, parasites is big with MSers. So
Yes.
that's kind of funny, right? We can
Yeah.
call people MSers now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be interesting to see what comes up for his stuff. So please let us know. Okay, as we kind of approach the final minutes here, one thing I obviously want to ask is if someone resonated with your story, because everyone's unique, right? And actually, not many people have come on this before with the chronic hives thing. So if someone's listening to you today, and for whatever reason, whether it's your personality, story, combination of both, it's like, all right, Erica's my person. I like her. Where can people find you if they'd want to reach out?
At Instagram, I'm at Erica Duffy Wellness. Facebook, Erica Duffy Wellness. And then my website is ericaduffywellness.com.
Nice and easy. We'll throw that in the chat for you guys. Okay. And then, someone shared the ewgthing.org. So
Oh, thank you. Yes,
awesome.
it's
So you guys have that right here. Excellent.
good.
Erica, for the final question today, we have a signature question on this podcast. Always end with it. And it's just, to the best of the ability that you're able to answer it. If we could give you a magic wand and knowing what you know now, you could get every single person in this world to either start doing one thing for their health or you can get all of us to stop doing one thing for their health. Or our health, I should say. What's the one thing that you'd get all of us to do?
Well, there's two-part answer because I would
Mhm.
say don't sit on your health. If you feel fine, if you're moving along fine, don't wait for something to happen until you work on your health because you might be listening and think, oh, or you might not be realizing some people are in like a chronic state for so long they don't realize because they're just going along. They might not realize something's wrong. So if you're getting symptoms, don't sit on them. Like it's your body trying to tell you something's wrong. So get it checked out with probably a functional practitioner, I would say. And don't like think that it's not normal to have like bloating and fatigue, and you don't have to live like that. So that's what I would say is to just either don't wait for a symptom to happen, or if the symptoms do happen, get on them.
I think yeah the second one's probably more realistic. Just in this, I mean, you're totally right,
Yeah.
but the second one's more realistic in the sense that there of all the people in my life, as much as I talk about this, as much as you can't ignore me, I'm annoying as hell with it. Post about it all the time, bring it up at the family parties when everyone's trying to enjoy Thanksgiving dessert. There's been maybe 2 or 3 people I've known in the last 9 years that have been smart enough. I shouldn't say smart enough. That's not the right word. Forward thinking enough to test themselves while they were perfectly healthy. Felt
Yeah.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, I think that's why your second option is very realistic. By us sharing messages like this and becoming practitioners and letting people in our life know what's going on, I am finding that many people in my life become a lot more aware and proactive of this with otherwise minor symptoms. Bloating in and of itself is not going to kill you. So if you start getting on top of it, then you got a probably pretty straightforward healing journey. Not always, but probably pretty straightforward healing journey. So yeah, if nothing else, if you're super smart and forward thinking, my gosh, do them today. But at the
Yeah.
very least, you start getting those symptoms, have that awareness like you did, right? You knew
Mhm.
something was off. It just doesn't make sense. I got to change something. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's a great words of wisdom to end on. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you so much for coming on today and being our guest.